views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
This show's audio was via a Skype call.
Get fired up for Spirit Fire Radio with your hosts, Dorothy Riddle and Steve Kramer. Get ready to shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in these modern times. Bring purpose to your life through practical spirituality and add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Dorothy Riddle and Steve Kramer.
Hello, listeners. It's wonderful to be with you for Spirit Fire Radio and our continuing talks of heart energies throughout this month of March. I'm joined today by my lovely co-host today and every Wednesday, right? By Dr. Dorothy Riddle. Hello, Dorothy.
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be with you again. So, Dorothy, we are going to continue our discussion about these energies of the rays. We are spending the entire month of March talking about heart energies. And when I say rays, these are 7 qualities of energy that are omnipresent. And we've divided these 7. You can sort of think of them almost as 7 colors to the spectrum or 7 notes to the scale. This idea that there are 7 parts to the whole. And what whole? Well, we're really talking about universal truths, universal energies that are omnipresent that we can tap into and utilize. And there are 7 of these. And we started last week by talking about Ray 2, or these energies of love, wisdom. And so we're going to move on through the even numbers for the rest of the month, that being 2, 4, and 6. And today we're on 4, which is known as harmony through conflict. Interesting words, eh, Dorothy?
Absolutely. And Steve, I would just add to what you were saying. These energies, it's not just that they're omnipresent, but each of us has particular energies that we resonate to more easily, and others that seem less familiar to us. So I would invite our listeners to be reflecting, as they listen to our discussions of the rays, which ones do they work with really well already, which are kind of familiar tracks, and which are ones that don't feel as comfortable with, and they might misinterpret what someone does if that person is acting in alignment with that particular energy.
Yes, because that energy is really moving through all things and all situations. We can sort of find it, as you say, in qualities in people we know, in qualities in ourselves, even in qualities of the way we respond to something. So the qualities of our emotions or the qualities of our mind. So it's really a fascinating subject. Look forward to going into it. Dorothy, might we start off with a couple quotes?
Absolutely. So, Steve, the ones I have for today are both from the Dalai Lama. The first one is, "It is very rare or almost impossible that an event can be negative from all points of view." So this is, gets us to the whole issue of balance and different perspectives. And then the second one, "People take different roads seeking fulfillment and happiness. Just because they're not on your road doesn't mean they've gotten lost." And I find that one a really helpful one to remember in terms of not being, judgmental of somebody else who has a different focus in their life.
Or a different quality, right, of their being.
Right.
That you don't recognize or understand at all. It helps to realize that people might be taking different roads, seeking different happinesses, and the way they go about that is different, because actually they're utilizing these qualities, these universal qualities, and maybe that's just not the way you do it. But what I loved about the first quote as well is it's saying that that we should look at various points of view to see if we're only coming at it from one angle, in that, you know, an event might not be negative from another's point of view, but might be positive. And one wonderful thing about the fourth ray, or the energy of harmony through conflict, is that we're looking at all sides. We're looking at all sides and then finding that common ground. I would say this energy is a very bridging energy, that it's the energy of the mediator. I think of a mom in between, you know, 3 or 4 kids that are all going at it, and being that ultimate mediator, that ultimate connector, even with hands on heads, saying, hey, let's all get it together and try to find some common ground, being perhaps just some peace and ease in the moment.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about mediation, because if you think about it, Steve, the number 4 is in the middle of the 7 numbers, right?
Yes.
So it's like a fulcrum between the first 3 and then 5, 6, 7 on the other side. So I find that very interesting, and I think, you know, part of what you're getting at is that one of the dynamics of this energy is understanding that that different perspectives do exist, and that there's not one particular way that is the only way, but that balance among different perspectives is what's critical to achieve.
And I find that as we're speaking about sort of balance, in that I find that to be relational, if you will, relating two parts in a way that can bring harmony and therefore achieve balance. And I would say that as we look at the even rays, that there's a thread, or these 2, 4, 6, which is love, wisdom, then harmony through conflict, and next week, which is devotion and idealism. If we give them the numbers 2, 4, 6, they're the even rays and the heart energies. And I find throughout all these, there's something about relationship. There's something about connection, and looking at the ways in which connection expresses itself in a particular way. In this way, how do we bridge? How do we find connection of various parts that may seem at first to be at odds with each other or creating conflict? How do we create harmony amongst them? Because certainly we can.
Absolutely. It reminds me of a particular practice that, to me, really represents this, and that's the practice of appreciative inquiry, where you ask another person questions. You're curious about where they're coming from. You're trying to understand what it is that is important to them, why they've chosen this particular perspective. And, you know, we have that old saying of how important it is to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, to get a feeling of what it's really like from their perspective. So that, to me, is part of what we're doing, is trying to understand that these different perspectives actually are not in conflict, that there are commonalities, there are different aspects to them that can all be brought forward and make a new whole.
As you say that, I'm thinking of its relationship to art, because really this energy of harmony through conflict is utilized consistently by artists, by writers. You think of somebody who is looking out into a landscape and actually connecting to this very different world in front of them, and then translating it, being, if you will, that mediator or bridge between the actual viewing and their interpretation of it, and then putting it down on a canvas to be something beautiful. So it's this idea of the artist as the bridge itself, which I find to be quite beautiful. I think of Van Gogh as being an incredible example of this harmony through conflict. We often think of him actually as quite conflicted as a human being, and yet creating these most beautiful, harmonious, gorgeous works of art. I love his quotes. He said in a quote, "The heart of man is much like the sea. It has storms, its tides, its depths. It has its pearls too." So he was one who was able to sort of fluctuate between this idea of drama and harmony, of nature even, and then the material or the man-made world, meaning that of paintings and art. So definitely this harmony through conflict is present whenever we're looking at something creative, a work of art, especially comedy. I find that comedians have a way of really understanding life and looking at a situation and shedding a new light on it as a way to deliver it to us or be a bridge of that situation to translate it in a way that we may find a different connection to it, even an aha or humorous connection to something. So harmony through conflict, all very related to art and beauty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would agree. And another dynamic that we may be familiar with that expresses the essence, I think, of this particular energy is that dynamic of synthesis, antithesis, thesis and antithesis resulting in synthesis. So you have two apparent opposites that can merge and create a new possibility. And that's part of that process of creating harmony out of disparate parts.
I also think of a diamond, Dorothy, which I think of as something that is becoming quite beautiful and clear. There's clarity being brought to something that is quite dense, and it's the result of heat and pressure. So I think of that as almost conflicting or energies pushing up against each other, creating this heat and this pressure that then in the end produces this beautiful gemstone. So I think this idea of harmony through conflict, or in fact, it's quite related to humanity and the way we evolve. We often evolve through struggle. We often find harmony through really exploring or experiencing conflict and realizing we would like something other. So often I find as human beings, we find our way to harmony, or one would hope so, often through contrast and through conflict. We're already at our first break, so listeners, stick with us. We're going to continue this conversation on this quality of energy called harmony through conflict after these words.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show, talk radio to thrive by. I am so thrilled to be talking to all of you. We have got talk radio for all of us. Are you ready and willing and able to accept all of the abundance you can muster up in your life? Check us out at drpatshow.com, transformationtalkradio.com, transformationradio.fm. Oh my goodness.
Do you know how powerful your thoughts and beliefs are in determining your experience of your life? Is it really true that simply by changing some of the words you use in your day-to-day language, that you can change your life? I'm Megan Edge. Join me on Playing on the Edge, Radical Change with Ease, with my co-host Dr. Pat on Transformation Talk Radio. I look forward to seeing you there.
To find out more about Megan Edge, visit her website at meganedge.ca.
Are you ready to branch out? Take a leap of faith. Then tune in to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills on TransformationTalkRadio.com every second and fourth Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific to equip, empower, and enlighten yourself. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. So, get fearlessly ready and get powerfully rooted in your yes to live it up, love it up, and let it go to ignite the life you deserve. Visit GetRootedRadio.com and tune in.
Stuck in a roundabout of dysfunction? Learn how to speak your truth to power with host Dr. Kathy Obear. Create real change with smart tools and smart strategies. No frills, no fluff, just life-changing conversations to help get you where you want to be. Extend your reach and become an agent for real change with Kathy Obear. For more information on Kathy and her work, please visit drkathyobear.com. That's drkathyobear.com.
Did you know that when working with the law of attraction, it's beneficial to share your longings with a supportive tribe who can assist in maintaining accountability and hold the creative space for your desires to manifest? I'm Autumn Seibel, host of Golden Otter Radio, where the metaphysical meets the mainstream. Join me each month at the new and full moon to plant your seeds of abundance, consciously tend to your intentions throughout the lunar phases, then harvest the fruits of your co-creation with the universe in my Lunar Manifestations members-only forum. Your tribe is waiting for you at goldenotter.us.
Are you ready to broadcast your brand ideal with the latest in information technology? Bioresonance software distills your brand ideal or intention and enhances your core internal organizing principle. This has a tremendous impact on your organization's alignment as well as the behavior, satisfaction, and the retention of its employees. Your physical business structure can unfurl, opening up the possibilities of creating an energetic presence for a brand even ahead of its launch. Check out JeanetteWolf.com for more on its signature frequency branding.
Welcome back, listeners. We're so happy you are joining us for this conversation. We're talking about harmony through conflict, energies of the heart, all month in March. Before we go any further, I'd love to have us say a word or two about our organizations. Both Dorothy and I are here representing nonprofit organizations. Dorothy, would you like to say a word about the School for Esoteric Studies?
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. The School for Esoteric Studies is an educational nonprofit that focuses on providing training for persons who have a spiritual discipline that they would like to deepen. We also complement that with various group initiatives. One of our group initiatives is intentional intergroup collaboration, that is working with other like-minded organizations. And Spirit Fire Radio is a wonderful example of that collaboration. So if any of our listeners belong to organizations that would like to collaborate with the School for Esoteric Studies, you can find out more about us at esotericstudies.net. We also are about to launch our annual Subjective Group Conference. This year it is on suffering, from suffering to joy, the science of redemption, and we hold this during what's called the 3 linked festivals period. That is the full moons of Aries, which is just upcoming, Taurus, and Gemini. So again, schoolforesotericstudies.net if you're interested in joining us, in receiving the study materials for participating in this conference, please let us know.
Beautiful. Wow, from suffering to joy. It sounds a bit like harmony through conflict, right, Dorothy?
Yes, I think it's very related. Absolutely.
Very apropos, and what a wonderful endeavor, listeners. Please, by all means, there's so much useful information on the website for the School for Esoteric Studies and Spirit Fire as well. We are an educational nonprofit whose mission is to cultivate consciousness and educate people on the importance of spirituality in their everyday lives. Meditation is very important to us. We spread that word often through our meditation practice. We have our own called the Practice of Living Awareness, which is a beautiful combination of a mindfulness practice and an insight practice. And it's a 14-step online program. We offer that free to everybody, constantly uploading new meditations, and they can be delivered to your mailbox, and meditating with us regularly. And we've got a meditation center in Western Massachusetts, Spirit Fire Retreat Center, which supports that practice with meditation retreats throughout the year. We also have lots of online classes and programs that are available through the website, and are just thrilled to be in this collaboration with the School for Esoteric Studies. It's been almost 2 years, right, Dorothy? What beautiful
Absolutely.
thing we have created. It's been a lovely connection and quite harmonious. That's my secret bridge back to harmony through conflict.
Very good. Well, it's interesting, to reflect on how I think the collaboration is also a good illustration of how two organizations with related but slightly different focuses can collaborate harmoniously. So it's really good. I really appreciate it.
And listeners, if you've been listening to us for quite some time, you might even really have a bit of a laugh or a smile in just noticing that Dorothy's energy and my energy are very different in the way we approach something, right? Dorothy and I laugh at this all the time, in that you will see that throughout this entire month, I have got a lot of these, even as we called energies, that I utilize these, or they seem to be very familiar or comfortable and cushy with me. And Dorothy with the odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, and 7. And so what's so beautiful about our coming together, doing something creatively, is we will come about it in a very different way. And it's as those two start to mingle and integrate, they form something very exciting and new, because we've come at it from very different sides, very different angles, and very different energetic approaches. So, I think perhaps listeners who've been with us for a while might even notice that. Just we approach things.
That's right. And it's interesting to me, just to share with our listeners, we both come from a grounding in the ageless wisdom, right?
Yes.
So we both have a whole range of shared values and perspectives, and yet the way we use them, the way we think about them, the way we implement them can be different, and it is very rich to me, the collaboration, very rich.
I would also say, Dorothy, that there is some harmony through conflict, meaning the fourth ray energy at work as we are coming together to prepare for a show, because we're finding that we are using our common ground and our common love and appreciation of ageless wisdom and esotericism. And we're often having to sort of find our way to where each other are coming from. We're like our own little mediators. And so it's this process of, oh, I understand where you're coming from, but I've got to really find a way to, connect to that personally. And then once we build that bridge, just like bridges, wonderful things pass back and forth. But that bridging, that finding the common ground is so important and necessary. Indeed.
Mm-hmm. And I think I'm really glad you raised this, Steve, because I think it's important for all of us to remember that there's always something that we have in common with anyone that we meet. It may be hidden. The conflict may be so great it kind of overwhelms it. But we after all energetically are all interconnected. We are all part of one large cosmic energy field. So there are those connections, and it's those that allow us to bridge and to create something very meaningful and beautiful together.
Indeed.
Now, on the other hand, those conflicts can lead to worry and frustration, right? We can really do ourselves in by getting attached to a particular outcome of, when we notice that we're not quite aligned with each other, we're not quite on the same page, then we get very attached to the other person being on our page. And that can result in a lot of unhealthy stress and worry and frustration.
Yes, that's not so much building a bridge equally from each side until they meet in the middle. That's sort of like ramming a bridge into somebody else's land and then coming right over and saying, "You're coming my way." No, it is really right, finding that common ground. I always find it useful, Dorothy, to go sort of almost directly into understanding the energy by understanding ways in which it expresses in not so useful ways. So ways in which harmony through conflict actually expresses negatively, if you will, or I would say without its clarity of purpose. And one way I am thinking of anyway is that when we're able to see both sides, we can sometimes get lost in that ping pong effect of both sides and not ever finding a stable middle ground where everybody can come together in a place of actual balance, but actually an overemphasis on these opposites and extremes. Because you can see them, you may have a temptation to be focusing on one extreme and then the other, and that can lead to, not a fun experience. I mean, if we think of the mind, it can lead to what you would think of drama or emotional drama in the emotional realm, but you can think of someone with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or madness that's bouncing from subject to subject because they have the capacity to tap into them all, but they're not actually able to bring it into balance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, also, Steve, you had shared, when we were talking about this program, you had shared with me some of your experiences when you were working in a bar in New York. I wonder if you'd share some of that with our listeners.
Sure. Speaking of schizophrenia and madness, I ran a bar with several of my friends for 18 years. People think it's funny that I went from martinis to meditation, but really there's quite a bit about being met exactly where you are in both experiences. But often, I'm a little guy. I'm 5'6" on a good day, and we would have bouncers, and I was running the place. So if something would come up, if a bar brawl, if people have had too much to drink and they don't agree about something and it gets heated, and all of a sudden they're ready to go at it, we'd have 6'2", these 6'2" bouncers that would not be able to do anything. They would push people apart. They would make matters worse. They'd tell everybody to be quiet. And if it wouldn't, I would see it from a distance, and they would call me in, the little guy. And I had a way of looking people in the eye, of seeing what they had in common, of listening to each other, seeing what happened, what took place, where did it go wrong, and finding a way for them to realize that, listen, you want to stay here, you want to be here together. Let's try to find some way to bring this into balance. And it was just by actually engaging with each of them and kind of being that person that would listen and then relay with some clarity, without alcohol in my system, what that person might be trying to say, and hear the other person and say what they might be saying, realize we've actually all got more in common that brought us to this particular place, meaning under this roof, than we have, differences. And so let's try to figure it out. But what I found interesting is that it was always me, the little tiny guy, who could take this horrible, crazy conflict that was about to happen. And it was only through realizing that once I connect to one, once I connect to the other, and I work in getting them to connect, that is where we're going to find harmony, and not just pushing these two energies that are very heated apart to opposite sides. But you've got to create harmony in order to allow that to move on and become something new. So, yes, I tend to tap into that energy quite a bit.
Well, I think that's a beautiful illustration of the functioning of this particular type of energy in two ways. One is what happens when people are not seeing that commonality, are not actively bridging, and they are, in fact, in very active and violent conflict. And then what it means to actually see all sides and mediate and come to some kind of positive resolution, which may not have been what either party was thinking of initially.
And you, as a person in the middle, actually become, as you were saying, the fulcrum. You actually become something that exists in between them, that they can move through, and in a sense almost, it tinctures their experience in a way, rather than if they were expected to come at it, on their own, if they were expected to resolve that on their own. Dorothy, we are already at another break. I don't know how that happened. That went so fast. So listeners, we're going to be back just after these words and continue the conversation.
Has your buzz for life buzzed off? Feeling ignored, invisible, and wondering if this is really all there is? The years go by faster as we gain momentum. You're halfway there. Are you gathering speed or puttering out? Hit your stride for the liberating half of life. Comfortable in your skin? You can do better than that. Tune in to Discovering You Again Radio every fourth Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific as host Susan Axelrod encourages listeners to decide what they want, get inspired to action, and face challenges head-on. Host Susan Axelrod pulls no punches, encouraging you to grab the brass ring and soar. For more information about Susan, go to www.whatwillyourlegacybe.com.
Did you know that all of the shows on the Transformation Radio Network are available as podcasts to stream or download?
Really?
Check us out. Go to transformationradio.fm. We have business shows, spiritual shows, energy healing shows, and pretty much everything in between. Something for everyone, guaranteed to inspire, educate, and transform. We are transforming the world, one listener at a time.
Dream on, fly high, and live adventurously on The Laura Meeks Show. Tune in each month on Transformation Talk Radio as host Laura Meeks guides you in finding your unique gifts and bringing them to life. As a certified life coach, speaker, and veteran bomber pilot for the U.S. Air Force, Laura knows how to follow a dream. She is ready to support you so you can dream on, fly high, and live adventurously. For more information on Laura and her work, visit flyhighliving.com.
To find answers to life's questions, you need to look within yourself. Dr. Glenna Rice brings your questionable conversations on Transformation Talk Radio each month. Tune in each month for insight into how you can live up to your full potential. Dr. Glenna is a physical therapist, certified Access Consciousness, and Access Body Class facilitator. How does it get any better than this? For more information on Dr. Glenna Rice and her work, visit glennarice.com.
Living Lighter Radio with Jason and Patricia. We have an ecosystem approach to your life. Tune in weekly every Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio as we, Jason and Patricia, discuss what's truly holding you back. We offer you the tools you need to reach your goals and at the same time be living lighter. For more information about Living Lighter, visit www.livinglighter.org.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. Dorothy and I are spending this show talking about an energy called harmony through conflict. So, that sounds really lovely to me, Dorothy, right? Harmony through conflict. I feel like I see conflict. I walk out the door and I see conflict all the time, at least in the landscape of our human friends. So how do we get to tap into this energy, or how do we utilize it, and how do we get effective in utilizing this idea of bringing harmony through conflict? Good question, huh?
Yeah, it is. And I think interestingly enough, one of the answers, I think there's many answers, but one of them may seem a bit contradictory, but it is recognizing that within ourselves we have limitations, and accepting those, that it's our, what we refer to sometimes as our humanness, that, we can misinterpret things, we can make mistakes, and if we do that, then we are much more likely to be accepting of that in others. And so instead of conflict, we listen, we, as you were saying, we look for the areas of common ground that we can build on together. instead of just being critical of the other person.
Yeah. I also find that getting curious about the outside world, just getting curious about every detail really opens and expands this idea of expanding and including, seeing life really as an exploration. And I see in what you're saying is that, just open yourself up, realize that there is so much more out there that is very different perhaps than ourselves, and try to find the connections, try to find what is interesting about it. It's kind of look at every experience as an artist would be observing a still life. Try to see the usually not seen, or can you appreciate, can you find, something wonderful in that which looks messy or which looks ugly, or vice versa. So it's seeing yourself as that connector of looking out into the world with a sense of curiosity, that almost as if your experience is that of the artist, creating new experiences by taking everything in as new, as fresh, and as exciting without judgment. And that then creates just a flow and an ease within your experience, and it becomes quite creative.
I would agree. And another aspect of that is, I think it's interesting to reflect on what do we think is harmony, or what do we think is peace? What do we think is even happiness? And recognizing that it doesn't have to be that everybody else agrees with us or are little cookie cutter copies of us, but that it's actually fun and interesting and exciting to see harmony more as the blending of many different qualities. Like you have the colors of the rainbow that come together. And I think in my own life, for example, my partner is an artist and has such a different perspective in terms of ways that we see the world, ways that we think about the world, ways that we talk about the world. And I would lose so much if I got into a critical mode and said, well, that's not the right way. Instead, it really expands my experience and my appreciation of the world to be able to experience it from a different perspective than what's most familiar to me.
Well said. And that's related to accepting our limitations, right? Or just even accepting ourselves as we are, as the way in which we see things, and then, working not to take sides, as you're saying, to see it from various perspectives and find appreciation in all of it. Certainly the minute you see yourself really standing on firm ground and saying, this is the way it is, you're setting yourself up for conflict, right? You're setting yourself up for somebody to say, no, it's not. So it can be a wonderful exercise, to just try to be that middle ground. And it's not saying be a pushover. It's just saying to, get curious, expand and include around you, and just see if you can take it all in without judgment. In a sense, you become that fulcrum then of your experience with all things of equal interest and equal value. And Dorothy, I wanted to just for a moment bring back, you mentioned about the 4 being in the middle. And I just find that so interesting. Both of us are in esoteric circles, and we have seen what is called the constitution of the human being. And what this is 7 planes of really, it's a map of integration of, I would say, spirit into matter. But it's a very interesting look at different planes of energy in ways that consciousness expresses. And right in the middle is what is called the Buddhic plane. It sits on, there are 4 of these planes, just as there are 4 rays, there are 7 planes, just as there are 7 rays. And I find it interesting as well that we have 7 chakras, and our heart chakra is chakra number 4. A lot of people will give the chakras numbers. And I find it interesting that the Buddhic plane that harmony through conflict, that the heart center all hold this middle ground, this middle way. And, the Buddha was known for talking about the middle way, saying that these extremes of either indulgence in the material world or total self-denial, they don't free us from sorrow or suffering. It's to take this middle ground, to be actually in the world, as it says, but not of it. That it is this middle way of not rejecting one or the other that is the way to find balance and to try and find peace and to find happiness. So the heart, I think, when we center in the heart, and we've talked about the heart before as being this center of interconnectedness and of integration in the way so many things it does physiologically, it's this centerpiece. We say, our core, our to the heart of something. So again, a fulcrum. I just find it so interesting that all of those seem in alignment conceptually. And so if we can be that in the world, if we can find that middle way between extremes and be that bridge, we'd all be a lot better off, much less suffering in the world, to use the energy in that way.
I agree, Steve. And I'm just thinking in terms of our listeners who may not be familiar with some of the work that's been done, for example, by the HeartMath Institute or the Global Coherence Initiative, about the fact that actually the physical heart is not just this kind of mechanical pump, but it's actually a very intelligent, vibrant part of us physically. I wonder if you could say a few words about that.
Well, indeed, it's a torus. So a torus, if you've ever watched your food processor when you're making hummus, a torus is something that starts at a single point of unity, and it moves out in every direction. Energy moves out in every direction and comes back to that single point of unity. So the heart is one of those in and of itself. It really is, if you think about just the bloodstream, it does just that. It sends blood out to every cell in the body and comes back again to be rejuvenated or to even report back, as to many would say, to what the body needs, because it has actually done this total exploration of all that is and brings it back to the now and then moves back out again. And so it's creating this electromagnetic field, and the heart does that in and of itself. It creates an electromagnetic field. There is a positive and a negative, and that field is actually the field that allows us to have that sense of interconnectivity, of relationship to the entire world around us. The heart is really responsible for that, not only on maintaining that sort of sense of harmony on our physical body, within our body, but also without, because it is actually the energetic organ, really, that is the ultimate bridge, that uses this harmony through conflict by sensing and using that its capacity to integrate and to bring forward our sense of interconnectedness.
Very beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I feel the need to, this will not surprise you, Steve, but I feel the need to add that how we experience, how we relate to this energy is very much related to the myths that we have around duality. We act as though our universe is dualistic. There's only two possibilities. In fact, that's absolutely not true. And it is that the belief in that myth that helps to reinforce the us-them dynamic that leads to the kind of violence that we've seen recently, horrible, horrendous violence. And it's so critical for us to realize that we are all one, that there is not this separation of the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, but we exist in a much more nuanced and diverse environment.
Yes, and that actually it is quite complex, and that it is that field, it is what exists between the positive and the negative that creates that electromagnetic field. If you even just think of a battery, really, it is what's in the middle that's important. That is the stuff. That is the complex, all that's in between, where we're really cooking with gas. So sometimes, yes, indeed, we get a bit too focused on the extremes themselves, or we find ourselves landed on only one extreme and looking over the great abyss at the other and saying, well, this here and not that there. And that's when we get into trouble. And so, Dorothy, I sense this could lead into a bit of a talk about inclusive social action. I know we have sort of endeavored to keep that in the forefront of our minds and discussion. So we're going to go to a break, and perhaps we can talk about the role that this energy plays within that when we return.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Steve Kramer of Spirit Fire Radio, and I believe that meditation changes everything. It leads us in the direction of greater well-being, and that's a fact. I struggled with meditation for years. I understood the principles, but I found it hard to incorporate them into my everyday life. Spirit Fire's meditation practice changed that. It's called the Practice of Living Awareness, and it's taught in 14 steps. These are 14 tools that I can use in any moment, on and off the cushion. Steps like smile, flow, and ground of being support my clarity of mind while I'm navigating the ups and downs of modern life. That's why it's called the Practice of Living Awareness. If you'd like to add meditation to your daily experience, the Practice of Living Awareness is free, online, and it's suited for any level of practitioner. Visit spiritfire.com for more information. And be sure to check out Spirit Fire's meditation retreats in Western Massachusetts. It's all there at spiritfire.com.
Are you ready to shift your current beliefs about death, from debilitating pain and loss? Follow Angie Corbett Kuiper as she shares that through choice, present moment awareness, and keeping an open mind that anything is possible, even in death. Tune in to Beyond Proof Radio with Angie, redefining death and loss, every first and third Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more, visit AngieCorbettKuiper.com.
You said forever, you said always. Now you know things have changed, and going back is not an option. It's sudden, devastating, and is like taking a leap of faith. Tune in to From Two to You, Thriving After Divorce Radio, as Sarah Lou's empowerment coach and spiritual mentor reminds you to have faith in yourself. Tune in every second Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific and listen as Sarah encourages you to leave negative stories in the past and move forward. We all need a friend. When I do becomes I can't. Let Sarah help as life takes you in a new direction. Leave the guilt and doubt in the past, step into the spotlight, and show the world who you are. To find out more about Sarah Lou's, visit sarahloos.com.
Are you ready to embrace your essence and the magic of who you are? Let me, Emily Perkins, hold your hand and walk with you as we go treasure hunting for the gold that lies within you. Tune in to Love Living Radio every second and fourth Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information, visit lovelivingHolistics.com.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. Wonder, Dorothy, if we could talk a bit about harmony through conflict. And it seems rather quite obvious in the ways that this energy plays a part in inclusive social action. And I wondered if perhaps you might just, before we go into that, say a few words about inclusive social action itself, perhaps even a definition of that for listeners.
Sure. So those of you who weren't with us in the month that we talked about inclusive social action, this is a a concept that the School for Esoteric Studies has been developing. We have a series of 3 white papers at esotericstudies.net. And what we mean by inclusive social action is intentional action to stop specific violence in a manner that does not further divisiveness. So the idea here is that it does not help at all to just send loving energy to a conflict or an individual that is intentionally set on violence. It just gives them more fuel for the fire, so to speak. On the other hand, it does not help at all to take revenge, to hurt somebody else as more than they hurt you, or to have that kind of attitude, because it simply escalates the violence that's occurring. So the challenge that we're mulling over or talking about, working on, is how do we say, no, this is not okay. Enough is enough, without the escalation. And one of the keys to that, I think, is that the action that's taken has to be done compassionately. And to me, compassion is very much related to this Ray 4 energy.
Yes, indeed. It's necessary because it is the energy that provides the awareness of our interconnectedness and of our commonality, of our relationality. It provides that bridge. So one thing I find really interesting about looking at these in the way we're doing it and calling them heart energies is that we are looking at almost a process, and we'll move into number 6 next week, and I think we'll be able to talk about it, almost summarize. But really, inclusive social action as a whole, I see as the fruit of the heart itself and of the energy of love wisdom, which we talked about last week. And we talked about love and what that means. And we're not talking about a sentimental or attached love, like a love song in a sort of romantic sort of way. But we're talking about love in the sense that we understand our interconnectedness. We see ourselves in another and another in ourselves. That idea of commonality and unity and being aware of that. And then it's what we do with that awareness is the wisdom aspect. So I find inclusive social action holds that energy of love wisdom that we talked about last week at the forefront. But I find that harmony through conflict is the action part of it, the inclusive social action. So I appreciate, Dorothy, and you saying, well, how do we do it? What are we doing in order to bring about this change, this harmlessness without furthering divisiveness, stop violence without furthering divisiveness? Well, how do we do it? So this energy, I believe, plays a part in the bridging aspect, that we really have got to not push against one another, find what we have in common, and then work together to bring about a situation that works for all of us, where nobody is being harmed and there is not a division. And so it's that's where the energy, I believe, it's in the action part of it.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I want to also just mention, Steve, because I think it may help listeners really grasp what we're talking about when we talk about inclusive social action. This is for those who have been, involved in like family interventions or whatever. When there's a crisis with someone, this is that concept of tough love, of setting boundaries, of saying, no, you can't go past this. I will not support you in going past this, and yet radiating that love, that caring, that compassion. And so, I think part of what the Ray 4 energy does is it helps us remember that we are connected, and helps us feel when we, hopefully unintentionally, are harmful to ourselves or to others. because particularly right now in our political environment, I think it's easy to become desensitized to the various forms of harm. There's so much going on that is disrespectful or harmful that you just get kind of numb to the whole thing. And it's hard to find the ground to stand on and to keep sensitized without going nuts to the fact that this is not okay. It's not okay.
Yes, yes. And
I mean, we have so many examples. We have the children being put in cages at the southern border. We have legitimate asylum seekers being called, illegal aliens. We have the shootings, the horrendous murders of people just because they happen to hold a different belief or come from a different faith. There's so many things happening around us every day that we can just kind of tune out if we don't remain sensitized.
And then we really do simply stay in our own sort of isolated compartment within humanity. And
that's right.
What we have to realize through this energy of harmony through conflict is that we can't push the other away. We have got to find a way to bring together, or to bring into both sides awareness that non-harm, and that inclusivity is actually a universal principle, and there's no you work with it or you work against it, and when you work against it, you really see that it just creates more conflict. And so it's really trying to be that bridge that that endeavors to find that common ground and to take two disparate parts and try to bring them together for the very sake of including another, of being inclusive. Correct?
Yes, and I think one of the pieces that is easy to overlook, but that we need to keep firmly in mind, is that if we do not stand up and say this is not okay, we become complicit.
Yes.
The harm is on us. The violence is on us because we have not that we can individually stop it, but we cannot condone it.
And you so become, I believe then you become that voice. You become the voice that actually brings it into the light, that says, okay, I am examining this. I am experiencing this, looking at it, and I say no, right? In a sense, that declaration, that action is the first step, a very necessary step to building that bridge by bringing it into awareness and saying, this is actually wrong. It then you become that connector, that bridge. Very important indeed. It is called harmony through conflict, right? So it's that piercing energy. And once again, as you so eloquently said at the forefront of this conversation about these different energies, even as we were talking about will, that all of these energies that we've talked about so far, we've talked about will, we've talked about love, wisdom, we've talked about harmony through conflict. That harmony through conflict, there's an action component, there's will in there. So it's using all of these energies we have, that we have at our disposal, but with the intention of, in the end, we would like to be in a place of harmony and in a place of cooperation and nonviolence and non-divisiveness and non-separateness. And so that fourth ray is so important, that striving for harmony by whatever means, which means at times saying no, right? Putting the
absolutely.
Well, Dorothy, I hope we've covered it. We're at the end of the show, and I feel like that was a full conversation. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed exploring this idea, going into the idea of ray energies and harmony through conflict. Dorothy, thank you so much. Next week, we're going to talk about idealism and devotion, which is the sixth ray. I look forward to it.
Me too.
All right, listeners. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Fire Radio. Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern for your weekly guide to purposeful living and practical spirituality. Join hosts Steve Kramer and Dorothy Riddle as they shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in your everyday life. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. To learn more, visit spiritfireradio.com.